The easiest way to checkmate the opponent's king is what's called the ladder checkmate, or the lawnmower checkmate, as I think it's actually called. Um, Essentially, what you do is you just cut off each line of the opponent's king with a rook or a queen. In this example, I've got a rook and a queen because why not? But essentially, you cut off all of these squares for the king, and so you force the king to any of these three squares, and when it moves there, you cut it off again, and you just keep doing this until you reach the end of the board where the opponent's king has nowhere left to go. That's checkmate. Yeah, so the next example is again very similar, if it will let me select it. There we go. It's very similar, this time with two rooks. Now, the thing with two rooks is that they can't protect each other when they're on different ranks like this. If they were like this on two ranks, then they would be able to, obviously. However, in a situation like this, you can't just simply play this because your opponent can just take your rook, and that could be slightly embarrassing. So you need to obviously protect your rooks, move them out of the way, and when your opponent moves, again, just keep cutting off these ranks and forcing your opponent to come towards the side that you want them to go to. So keep checking. Again, you can't play this move because your opponent can just take it. So you just move to the other side of the board, and now look how far the king is from these rooks. Rooks, they're very long-ranged pieces, so they still cover all of these ranks, all of these squares from the king, and the king can't come this way, so you keep cutting off these squares until, again, you reach the end of the board, and that is checkmate. Let's go. Now, how does that work in an actual game? Like, sometimes you might not have two queens or two rooks extra. Well, here is a position where, let's say you're a bishop up. You've magically won a bishop throughout the game at some point. Maybe you've been following some of my other beginner series where you've won a bishop through a cool tactic or something. So what do? Well, what you should do is you should look to basically promote the pawns. That's the easiest way for a beginner to end a game, is to just promote the pawns to a load of queens. Hang on, I've just seen it. Oh! I've got him. Anyway, yeah, sorry if you like flies. Yeah. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, the easiest way to win a game is basically to just promote as many pawns as you can to queens, or at least two pawns to queens, and then finish with a ladder. And so essentially here, we're just going to go after all of these pieces, activate the king. That's very important in endgames, especially when there aren't any pieces on the board. The king becomes its own piece. And basically just taking everything left, sorry about that notification, and just keep going and taking everything, and then, like I said, just pushing all these pawns, make a queen, make another one, why not, and then go for the ladder checkmate. Now here, be very careful. If you come here to go here next move, this is stalemate. Stalemate, if you're not aware, is essentially when the opponent's king can't move and your opponent can't make any legal move and the opponent king isn't in check. Here, the king's not in check. King can't move anywhere, can't move here, any of these squares because they're all protected by our wonderful queens. So this would be a draw, even though we are 21 points of material up. Check out quick maths for that one. So, I mean, in this position, that's also checkmate. But if it might just be easier for you to remember to give this check here, force it back, and then after something like this, then this is checkmate. That's just one little case you need to be careful of. It has happened to me in bullet games where I've just been pre-moving this and just drawn. So yeah, be careful. Be very careful of that. Now, another thing you need to be wary of in endgames and when you're trying to win games is what's called the rule of the square. Essentially, you want to promote this pawn. Well, black wants to promote this pawn, and white would obviously rather they didn't. And so we need to figure out, can this king catch this pawn? Now, it's white's turn to move, and there's an easy way to figure this out. And essentially, if you draw a square from with corners of where the pawn is and where the queening square is, and you basically use that as a square. So that's a big square. Let's go. If the king can make it inside that square, then the pawn can be stopped, essentially. So here we go. The king goes here, which, as we can see, is inside the square. On the edges counts as inside the square. And so, therefore, the king is just in time to reach the pawn. And as we see, again, the king is still inside the square, because as it shrinks by one move, the king moves by one move as well. And so, there we go. It's a draw. And so, this is no longer... this position is basically a draw. And you can tell that immediately through this rule of the square. Now, here's another case here, as we see the rule of the square. So that is the big square where the king can actually make it inside the square here. So therefore, this pawn can be stopped, right? Well, no, because pawns can move 2 squares on their first go. And now the king cannot make it inside this square on the next move. And this is just not great. This is not great for white, as I will show you later how to checkmate with just a queen. Well, and the king, but yeah. Now, next one is called opposition. Opposition is essentially where 2 kings are opposite each other, and it's specifically where there is 1 square between the 2. Here, white is to move, and this position, because it's white to move, is a draw. Why is that? Well, because if white comes here, for example, black can, what they say, keep opposition by coming here, and now this king can't advance anywhere this way, and so if we just keep, if the king keeps moving, then the black king can keep opposition, and there is no way for the king to advance. And so even if you come back, then the king here can... One second. Oh my god. Bless me. Oh, bless me again, boys. Right. Anyway. Where was I? Yes. So the king just keeps opposition, keeps 1 square away, and there is nothing really you can do here. If you try and come this way, you could keep opposition here as black, or you could just come and attack the pawn, and after here, then just come back. You come back because whites now can't gain opposition. If you came here, then black could, then white could have opposition, and this is, well, we'll go into this in a moment, where white has the opposition. But in this position, it's black who has the opposition, and that means it's a draw. Now, if it's black to move here, this is what we call an outflanking maneuver, where essentially if black goes, for example, here to king c6, any move basically can demonstrate this. Basically, white does what's called outflanking, which is instead of going here and keeping opposition, you create space on one of the sides, and this allows you to push your pawn up. And if black comes here to try and regain opposition, we take it as white. And again, it's black to move, and you just keep outflanking them, whatever side they go. If they go to the right, you go to the left and up, and if they go to the right, you go to the opposite side, basically. I can't remember what I was talking about. But yeah, this just keeps happening until you reach this position where you can just push the pawn, and you can basically just push the pawn and yeah, win the game. Or at least promote to a queen, and I will show you how to checkmate with just a queen in a moment. So here, it's white to move. What should white play? A few moves, maybe even push the pawn. There is only really one continuation here that, with best play, doesn't draw the game, and that is this move, because this gives the opposition, and basically, like, this is the exact same position where you can just perform this outflanking maneuver, and if you try come back this way, then we are just, actually no, not there, we come here, and we just win the game. Basically, we just win the game. That's what you want to do. Win the game. Yeah, so I'll show you, if you just push the pawn, then you can come here, and even though this looks like you've just taken the opposition, black can actually come here and you can't regain the opposition because your pawn is in the way. So when you come here, black can get opposition for themselves, and this isn't good because you can just, yeah, there's no advancements and this is a draw. So yeah, that's one to remember. This position, you want to get opposition for yourself in this position. Next one, king and queen checkmate. How do you get checkmate with just a king and queen? You essentially give what is called knight opposition to the king. So we've just learned about king opposition, where two kings would be one square apart. Well, knight opposition with the king and queen is essentially where you pretend your queen is a knight and you keep it that distance away. It's kind of like if you were fighting, you want to keep someone like just the end of the jab. You want to keep someone at the jab so they don't keep running at you. Same with the queen. The king can't come anywhere near the queen because the queen covers all of these squares. And so you can, if you accidentally move your queen next to the king, then they can just take it, and that will be a draw because both sides just have a queen. And so basically, no matter where your opponent moves, say they move here, you want to keep exactly the same distance away. You basically move exactly the same way they move. So if they move to the bottom right, you move your queen to the bottom right, and again, you keep the knight opposition. If they move up, you move up. If they move up again, and yeah, you just keep doing this essentially until the opponent's king reaches the side of the board, in which case you basically confine them to one file. You make this move, you make your queen cut them off so that they can only move against the edge of the board, and then from there you basically just move your king in, and after they have finished running away, you can give this kind of checkmate, kiss of death, I believe it's been called before, where the queen is attacking the king on the edge of the board, and the queen is protected by the king. So yeah, that's how you checkmate with just a king and queen. So that's very useful to know, especially in conjunction with something like this, where rule of the square, where you can promote, where you can figure out if your pawn can promote, and if it can, you get a queen, and then with the queen, you use the checkmate. Same with something like this, where you come here, you promote the pawn, and you get a queen, and then you continue that queen. You continue the queen into the checkmate I've just shown you. Now, that's supposed to be up here. There's a similar checkmate with a rook and a king. It's obviously a bit harder with a rook because a rook is less powerful than a queen. But essentially, the idea remains the same. You want to push the opponent's king to the edge of the board. Now, how do you do that? You essentially just cut off as many squares as you can. You want your king in opposition with the opponent's king again. You can make waiting moves with your rook, or you can push your king towards their king to create opposition. And the moment you're in opposition, you put your rook on the same file as the king, which pushes their king backwards. And sorry about that. I just started coughing loads. But yeah, you basically just keep pushing their king backwards. So you keep coming in with your king, chasing their king. If they attack your rook, obviously don't let them take it. Make some waiting moves until opposition is gained. And then the moment opposition is gained, you play this check, which forces the king backwards. And again, you just keep chasing them down the board until, again, opposition. Boom, now they're on the edge of the board. So essentially it's the exact same thing. You give opposition, they attack your rook. You can come here, and then finally give checkmate this way, or maybe it might be a little bit easier to just remember to just put your rook on the other side of the board, and then say they just keep doing something like just run away. Then eventually just chase them, and eventually you can give checkmate like this as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. That's all of the basic ways to checkmate. That's the basic ways to convert maybe a slight advantage in an endgame where you've got, like I said, a piece up maybe or a few pawns, and you can just push them down the board using these tricks that I've just taught you and win. You can finally win games as opposed to just being maybe material up and you don't know how to convert it. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and catch you in the next video. Make sure to subscribe and all of that good stuff. Mwah.